Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Michael Scott podcast presented by Platform Sports Media. I've got a great show lined up for you guys today. It's hot. We're entering the dog days of summer. We're approaching mid-June at this point. The coronavirus pandemic fears are wrapping up. America is fully aware of the social issues that exist in our country, but still, the sports world is finally starting to make its comeback, and it seems like it's creeping in. But let me tell you, I'm getting anxious waiting for it, and we got a bevy of topics to go over today. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So the first topic or news story that broke late last night that's gaining a lot of steam surrounds Reggie Bush and his reinstatement by USC. Now, the university has made the decision to officially end its disassociation with the former Heisman Trophy winner after 10 years following an NCAA investigation and sanction that Bush and his family received improper benefits at USC. Now, I got to be completely honest with you. This is good news for both the university and Reggie Bush, because at this point, he's kind of been a tarnished figure, which is really disappointing considering the fact he's probably the greatest player of all time that the Trojans have had walk through their locker room and through their program. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago that Reggie Bush was actually dominating on the field en route to leading the USC Trojans to 2 national championships and 3 national championship appearances. Now, I don't know if you guys remember Reggie Bush playing, but let me tell you, it seemed like every time he touched the ball, he was a human highlight reel. I mean, this guy, I remember watching him play Fresno State one night, and I think he went for like 250 plus all-purpose yards, or 500 plus all-purpose yards during a game, averaged about 10 yards a carry. They just couldn't tackle him. The guy was just head over heels better than anybody on the field. Now that Reggie Bush is returning to USC, in my opinion, I think we might see an upswing or uptick for the program. And this is a good thing because before these sanctions happened, USC was a powerhouse under Pete Carroll before he made the jump to the NFL. Because Bush and his family received improper benefits, including housing assistance, when he decided to make the decision to go to Los Angeles to play college football, the NCAA cracked down on the team. They lost a lot of scholarships that really hurt the team. They also received postseason bans. And really what you saw was the USC Trojans fall from grace. At the time, the Miami Hurricanes have been dominating college football for years. Then you saw it transition to the Trojans. And then after the Trojans fell off, you saw it transition to the current dynasties that are Alabama and eventually Clemson. Now, this is a good thing for the university and the fans. For one, not only is Reggie Bush's return going to provide USC with an alumni capable of attracting young, youthful players to the program. This is a guy who's very relevant. He's seen on TV all the time, and his name and highlights still come up when you think about USC. It's going to go a long ways to helping improve the image of what has been a struggling program for the last few years. So I like the move that USC is making the decision to reassociate themselves with Bush. Following that 10-year block off from the NCAA, the school could have decided whether or not to keep him away from the program. Now, we've seen those decisions at various programs around the country. You know, Michigan disassociating themselves at times with the Fab Five because of the Chris Webber scandal in the past, and the list for that goes on and on and on. But I really like the fact that Reggie Bush is coming home. It returns USC to what is that star power, and that star power in Hollywood is what originally made that team. And it would be nice for college football because you have out west, you have the Oregon Ducks, and you have some other teams that compete in the Pac-10 that are occasionally, suggested to be national title contenders. But if USC can make a comeback and really enter that national championship picture again, I think it's going to be great for college football. It's going to be great for the rivalries that exist within college football, particularly the one between USC and Notre Dame. I still think that USC has some work to do. They need to bring in some more recruits, but they got a great quarterback in Slovis this year who's going to really shock the college football world, in my opinion. And they brought back Clay Helton, their head coach, which I'm not sure if he's the guy to get this program back to the top stage, but he's a fine head coach. And USC's been successful during his tenure there. They've weathered ups and downs, and it seems like they're starting to peek out over the mountains right now. So I'm really excited about it. I see you guys don't have any questions or comments regarding the USC situation with Reggie Bush. So without further ado, unless I see something come through here in the next minute or so, we are going to move on and transition. We're going to talk a little bit about Conor McGregor. Now, Conor McGregor is making the decision for the third time in 4 years to retire from the UFC. Now, Conor is stating that he is no longer interested in fighting, that he's lost his love for the sport. He said right now, with where the UFC's at, there's no good matchups. For me, in my opinion, I'm not sure if I'm buying this or selling this. Like I said, this is the third time in 4 years that Conor McGregor's retired from the UFC. The last time we saw him early on in the year, he dominated Cowboy Cerrone and knocked him out within the first minute of a fight. And Conor McGregor looked rejuvenated, reinvigorated, refreshed. He looked better than I'd ever seen him. And now we get hit with this coronavirus pandemic. He loses his aunt to that struggle. He's been at home for a few months. The UFC is having trouble bringing their international fighters in to the U.S. So all these foreign fighters, which include Conor McGregor, have been put on hold, essentially. Now, Dana White's been rumoring this UFC Fight Island for months now. In Fight Island, it was finally released the other day on ESPN that this is going to be in Abu Dhabi, and a lot of these fighters, foreign, are going to be flown in, and they're going to conduct, obviously, a live event there. Now, Conor McGregor's a little upset because he doesn't have any fight really at this point that's been scheduled that he's looking forward to. He at the time turned down a fight to fight not Justin Gaethje, not Tony Ferguson. Khabib got replaced in the last fight. He was supposed to fight Tony Ferguson. Well, instead, Khabib dropped out, and so the replacement fight was Justin Gaethje and Tony Ferguson. That could have been Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor told Dana White that he wasn't a replacement fighter and suggested that he would not be fighting in that fight. So Gaethje capitalized on the opportunity. Now he's the next guy in line to fight Khabib. He's the next guy in line to go for that title in UFC. Now, Conor McGregor's sitting over here scratching his head, wondering, when am I going to get a worthwhile fight? Because now what you have is Conor McGregor talking about fighting Anderson Silva, but that's a legacy fight. That's a tradition fight. And really at this point, Nobody wants to see that. That's something you'd rather see at the end of Conor McGregor's career. And in my opinion, with the way he looked during his last fight, this is a guy who is still in his prime. He's still youthful. He's still able to compete at a high level and be very violent inside the cage. And that's a fight where people would start suggesting, well, you only fought Silva when he was washed up. He's no longer the same fighter that he once was. And that's a testament that McGregor himself correlated when speaking on this subject the other day. Now, there's a lot of things going on in UFC right now. Specifically, there's some of the biggest figures in the sport are very unhappy. You got Conor McGregor unhappy because he hasn't been scheduled for a high-profile fight, one that he thinks is worthy of his time and his star power, because Conor McGregor's the biggest selling ticket in the UFC still today. The guy has the potential to break the bank every time he steps in the cage. Now, John Jones, who's probably the greatest UFC fighter of all time, and Jorge Masvidal, a guy whose star has done nothing but rise in the past year after beating Nate Diaz for the BAMF title, those guys are both unhappy with where their pay currently exists within UFC. And it seems like those guys are going to start making attempts to vocalize and unionize the fighters in the UFC, but it remains to be seen. Digressing back to Conor McGregor, I guess my question really is, when opportunity comes your way and you have the potential to fight Tony Ferguson, why did you turn that fight down? Why were you waiting for Khabib? What are you holding out for? That's my point. There's a handful of fighters out there that you could fight or should have fought at any given time in the past few years, but you were dealing with a lot of personal issues before you made your comeback. And now that you've made your comeback, you've won one fight and you beat a legendary fighter in Donald Cowboy Cerrone. But let's face it, that was a guy who's a little bit past his prime, and I believe has lost 6 of his last 8 fights now. So really, if you're Conor McGregor, you got to do some soul searching. Is this what I really want? Or is this a negotiating ploy? It looks like I'm not getting any comments or questions from you guys surrounding either Reggie Bush or UFC at the moment. We'd love for you guys to jump in, send us a message via the chat on Facebook, YouTube. Put something in your comment box. We'll bring it up live on the show. We'll discuss things further. Make sure you guys are tuning into the Front Porch Tailgate podcast with Byron Hazley. That's available on all major platforms. Follow me on Twitter at Michael Scott PSM. And you can also connect with Platform Sports Media on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So we're going to switch up gears here right now. Obviously, with everything that's happened in the past 3 weeks since George Floyd's death, there's been a huge public outcry across America regarding systemic racism and police brutality that exists within our country. And one of the key focal points or the key areas that has been focusing on these issues is the sports world. We've seen numerous athletes, owners, coaches, and business organizations get out on the offensive and condemn these issues that have been plaguing our country for an extremely long time. Now, within the past few weeks, it seems because of those actions, there are now college athletes or former college athletes speaking out and claiming that perhaps some racism exists within the college football world. And the two schools that have immediately drawn headlines in the past week are Clemson and Utah. At each school, assistants, specifically Danny Pearman at Clemson and Morgan Scalley, the defensive coordinator at Utah, were both alleged to have used the N-word when dealing with players at different points in the last decade. Now, Morgan Scalley used the N-word through a text when communicating with a player way back in 2013. He's since been suspended indefinitely by the university while they're launching an investigation into the matter and trying to determine what the best step is moving forward. Now, Clemson's assistant Danny Pearman was dealing with a player during a practice back in 2017 where the player used the N-word. And when Pearman addressed the use of the language, he didn't specifically use the N-word in reference to any player. What he did was say, here at Clemson, we don't call people, the N-word, basically. And so what's been going on the past few days, because Dabo Swinney hasn't really come out and addressed it till just a day or two ago, and this happened a little over a week ago when the story broke, was people were suggesting that Dabo Swinney may be a little tone deaf when it comes to the issues that our country's facing, because both him and Kyle Whittingham, the head coach at Utah, actually defended the character of each individual in question that allegedly used the slur. Now, I wrote an article on this in my blog at Platform Sports Media a little bit earlier this week, and I spoke briefly about the situations and what had occurred, broke down the details for everybody, and I came to the conclusion that a momentary lapse in judgment shouldn't define an individual for the rest of his life. However, right now, the world is listening, the world is very sensitive, and the world is very aware of the struggles that minorities are facing within our country. And Clemson and Utah both have a chance or an opportunity to step up and be leaders in advocating for racial equality, to condemn racism within America, and fight off police brutality. Now, both Utah and Clemson at this point haven't taken any action to condemn this. Now, when speaking with the public, they've said obviously they don't approve of the use of the word, that those things shouldn't exist within our country, and they care very much for their players, blah, 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 right? So what they need to do at this point, in my opinion, is take action. You need to set the tone and let people know that this is not going to be acceptable. Sometimes at our jobs or wherever in the world, we make mistakes. And sometimes those mistakes affect other individuals, and they hurt them deeply and emotionally. Now, more times than none, when you're in the workspace and you see that happen to somebody, usually the individual that hurt the other people is let go from the company because it's a character issue and they're not necessarily a good fit with the program moving forward. Now, this is something that's going to continue to gain traction, in my opinion. Dabo Swinney and Kyle Whittingham have a public relations nightmare on their hands right now. I mean, you guys saw what happened with the whole Drew Brees flag situation at the end of last week. It was completely blown up by the media. I took part in that, obviously, and I put everything that I felt about it down on paper, and you guys can find that at platformsportsmedia.wordpress.com, at my blog. But this situation right now needs to be approached with the attitude that it's not acceptable. Using the N-word at any given time, if you're not Black or African American, is completely unacceptable. At the same time, the African American community, and this is just a suggestion, maybe should consider striking out that word. There's been people like Jay Williams on ESPN and others that have been very outspoken that they don't use the word because of the bad connotations that are associated with it and the long history of racism, slavery, and social issues that exist in our country that have ties to the word. So what we're seeing now at the heels of this whole Dabo Swinney issue at Clemson is Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins, two big-time NFL players. One, obviously, Deshaun Watson's the quarterback for the Houston Texans, and DeAndre Hopkins was just traded from the Texans over to the Arizona Cardinals. Now, he's one of probably the top 3 receivers in the NFL at this moment in time. Now, both players went to college at Clemson, and both players have been very outspoken at this point that they don't associate themselves with Clemson when announcing colleges during football games or things like that, because what we've learned is Clemson was built on essentially the plantation or the property of a former slave owner, John C. Hopkins, a former vice president back, hundreds of years ago. And Clemson, the school, still sponsors or endorses John C. Hopkins. His name is on an honors college at the school. They speak about him on the website. And if you guys don't know John C. Hopkins, the big deal about this is the fact that he was an advocate for slavery, which slavery obviously is the major underlying event that has created all this dissension and all of this back and forth between blacks, whites, and other minorities over the course of the last 400 years. And it's wrong at this point. We all know that. But when you're a university and you want to be progressive and you want to attract not only student athletes, but young Americans from all over the place to come attend your university and potentially better themselves to hopefully go on and contribute or better the world, you can't send the message that your college has been built on the foundation of slavery. So what these guys have done, Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins, is they've been outspoken. They've joined the petition to remove John C. Hopkins from his association or affiliation from Clemson University. Now, at this point, I have to believe the next step would be for them to ask Dabo Swinney if he's willing to speak out, advocate, and petition and help them in their cause, which will go a long way to helping clear up his image. Because at this point, like I said, people are suggesting that Dabo Swinney is a little tone deaf to the issues that minorities are facing within our country. Now, do you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns regarding the issues that are going on at Clemson or Utah? If you guys happen to have any, you can just add them right in the comment box. That's available on Facebook, YouTube, wherever you are viewing the live stream from. Now, let's transition here into the next topic. We're going to talk a little bit about the NBA at this point. So, Steve Kerr is attempting to set the tone for the Golden State Warriors for next season. Now, the team hasn't played very well this season. They lost Kevin Durant via free agency. Klay Thompson tore his ACL last season during the NBA Finals, and Steph Curry broke his wrist and missed an extended period of time throughout the season before the league shut down because of COVID-19. Now, the news is back out there that obviously the NBA is going to be returning at the end of July to Disney World to play in a 22-team league. They're going to play about 8 or 9 regular season games, followed by the playoffs. And the Golden State Warriors are one of the teams that wasn't invited to Disney World to compete. They're right now scraping the bottom of the barrel in the NBA because they've been playing basically with the JV team all year long. Now, Steve Kerr knows his players are starting to get healthy. He knows they're starting to be on their way back, and the NBA is going to allow these guys to meet up and join for summer mini camps moving forward. Now, Kerr went on record suggesting that he fully expects all these guys to be there because they've been essentially off for what's going to be 9 months by the time they return to camp. And so he can't see any specific reason why they wouldn't want to be there. Now, Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson, there's a lot of people out there suggesting that this dynasty is over, that they're over the hill, that they're not going to be what they once were. And there's a lot of people that have gone out there and suggested that if they never went out and picked up Kevin Durant, they may have not even won a second and third NBA title. Now, this is a team who set the NBA record with 73 wins in a season before Kevin Durant even got into the Bay Area. Now, you have the Splash Brothers, Klay Thompson and Steph, two of the best shooters of all time. And you have Draymond, who is the soul of that team. He's a offensive catalyst. He's the facilitator. He sets a lot of the picks and screens for those guys and really is the glue guy that makes everything happen. Now, this team is primed to pick very high in the upcoming NBA draft, and also potentially have the cap space to go out and get another marquee free agent. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I think about the fact that you have two of the greatest three-point shooters of all time, a guy who plays with a high motor and a lot of passion and sets the tone for this Golden State Warriors team, and then you're telling me on top of that you are going to add a top 5 NBA draft pick and potentially another marquee free agent. In my mind, I'm thinking the Golden State Warriors are going to be a force to be reckoned with this upcoming season. You're not going to see them in Disney World. They're not going to compete for an NBA title. They're not going to go toe-to-toe with the Clippers or the Lakers. But let me tell you this. In the future, specifically next season, I'd say don't sleep on them. Watch out. It's a very good basketball team. They've been there. They've done it before. And they potentially at this point have a little chip on their shoulder because people are saying that they're done, that they're not going to be able to make it back, that their time has come and gone. And because these guys are so young, I don't necessarily believe that. We're not looking at a situation here where you have Michael Jordan taking out the Pistons or the Pistons taking out the Lakers or the Celtics. Like what's happened in NBA history. We don't really have a passing of the torch at this point. What we really have here in the NBA, for the first time in a really long time, is a wide open league where we have teams that are very balanced. There's not as many big threes anymore. It's not a long-term way of competing. Yes, you can go out and win your NBA championships. We've seen it done, and that is the ultimate goal. But what happens more times than none, these big three teams that are assembled either get the job done or they fizzle out real fast because the teams are constricted in regards to the salary cap. They can't breathe. And right now, the Golden State Warriors, with where they're at and the presumption that the league salary cap is expected to jump dramatically again within the next year or two, they have the potential to extend this dynasty far into the future. I'm thinking this year, obviously, because they've been missing Klay, they lost Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry was out with injury as well. Draymond's been injured at times, not as serious as the other guys. This is more of a year where the Golden State Warriors are essentially reloading or retooling. You see this in various sports around, not necessarily professional at the professional level, but you see it at the college level, or you may see this in amateur or adult recreational leagues, specifically USSSA softball. But I'm not going to get into the specifics of that. Now, is there anybody out there that can really tell me that next season, when they're fully healthy, they've added an top 5 NBA draft pick and potentially a marquee free agent? Is there anybody that's going to tell me that they're not taking the Golden State Warriors seriously? I'm waiting to hear from you guys. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Michael Scott PSM. You can connect with Platform Sports Media on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We have a lot of videos of iconic sports moments and also news releases via our photo blog that drop on a daily basis. It's definitely a different way to receive your news than you're normally accustomed to. And normally when you watch networks like FSN, ESPN, and some of the others, you don't necessarily see everything. And you don't hear about a lot of the news in smaller markets because obviously those groups are focused on pushing ratings. That's what makes the world go round, because money makes the world go round, and the advertisers are drawn to that. Now, here at Platform Sports Media, we're not faced with that problem at this point. So what we're doing is we're trying to bring you guys not only the major stories that exist in the sports world, but some of the stuff behind the scenes that you might not normally see. All you guys that have been listening in today, I really thank you for your time. I hope you're enjoying the show. We're going to be doing this more frequently. And now we're going to get to our last topic. Jameis Winston. This is a confident young kid. And last year, he threw for 5,000 yards. He threw for over 30 touchdowns during a contract year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Team let him go, went out and picked up Tom Brady. And everyone that hasn't paid closely attention to it's going to say, well, why the hell would they do that? Well, let me tell you. Because Jameis Winston went out and also threw 30 interceptions, which was the first time anybody had thrown for 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions in the history of the NFL. Now, Jameis Winston, he undoubtedly has the talent to be successful. He's a kid who's won at every level he's played at, starting in Pop Warner, up through high school, up to college. And since he's gotten to the NFL, he hasn't necessarily seen the same success that he's accustomed to. Now, part of that can be to blame because he was drafted first overall by a franchise, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who pretty much been notoriously bad throughout their existence, aside Super Bowl run within back at the turn of the century. Now, when you're thinking about Jameis Winston, another word that comes to mind that you've seen over time with various issues is a lack of maturation. He's been very immature at points and really hasn't developed into the quarterback that a team would need when selecting someone with a number one overall NFL draft pick. Now, Jameis has incredible talent. Jameis has come out and said that he is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's said at times that there's no doubt in my mind that he's been balling on the field. He went on and got LASIK surgery. He was let go in favor of Tom Brady, who's the greatest quarterback of all time. Let's be honest here. And so now he's taken a back seat. He's been signed by the New Orleans Saints. He's going to go play for Sean Payton, who's a quarterback guru, and sit behind Drew Brees for the next year or so and really be mentored and see what it's actually like to be a professional day in and day out from one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And the thing you got to like about this is Jameis Winston's confidence, because he's come out and said he knows what type of quarterback he is. He knows what type of quarterback that he's going to be. And the thing about Jameis Winston, I'm not sure what it is. He's got that it factor. And it gives me hope and it gives me belief that I think the best is yet still to be seen from Jameis Winston. Now, there's a lot of people out there that'll disagree with me, that think he's garbage, that think he's junk, but you guys got to be honest with yourself. You can't deny the talent. The kid's got a big arm. He's very young when he entered the league, 21 years old. And he spent the past 5 years taking his lumps. But also within the past 5 years, you've seen a lot of success from him. And those high points give you enough confidence to believe that Jameis Winston is capable of not only being quarterback in the NFL, but winning in the NFL if he receives the proper tutelage and make the most of this opportunity to actually learn down in New Orleans from Sean Payton and Drew Brees. Statistically, the first 5 years of his career haven't been that far off from two of the greatest quarterbacks of all time in Brett Favre and Peyton Manning. The thing about Jameis Winston is today in the modern NFL, the league is more competitive than ever. And when you're turning over the football multiple times a game, you're making it very difficult on your team and on your defense to go out and be able to get you a victory. And that's something that the young man is going to have to improve. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's going to have to change. But I believe Jameis Winston can do it. Because according to him, he's balling. That's all I got for today, guys. You've been listening to the Michael Scott Podcast. I thank you guys all for your time. Make sure you guys are putting any comments or questions in that chat box, either via the Facebook stream or the YouTube stream. And make sure you're connecting with us. You can follow me on Twitter at Michael Scott PSM. Connect with Platform Sports Media on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. There's a lot of content out there, from photo blogs to written articles to videos and podcasts. And then also make sure you guys are tuning in to the Front Porch Tailgate Podcast with Byron Hazley every single week. That's a great show. It's our staple show here at Platform Sports Media. You can't miss it. Byron Hazley does a fantastic job on it. With that being said, I'm Michael Scott. You guys have a great day. You've been listening to the Michael Scott Podcast presented by Platform Sports Media.